Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something that is literally a game changer if you've been dealing with critics, haters, or just people trying to bring you down. We're talking about vindication, but not just a quiet behind-the-scenes rescue. The source material we're looking at today promises something way bigger. God doesn't just save you privately, He actually vindicates you publicly. We're going to break down why staying calm is your absolute best weapon and how true power is actually found when you just stop fighting. Let's get right into it.
So let me ask you this right off the bat. Why do we waste so much energy on gossip? Honestly, we all do it, right? We waste so much valuable time and emotional bandwidth getting totally bent out of shape over people talking behind our backs, spreading rumors, or just giving us zero respect. Well, the source challenges us here. It tells us to stop giving those people the time of day. Because when you engage with every single critic, you're fighting a battle you were never even supposed to be in.
Now, I want to pause for a second, because the source definitely doesn't sugarcoat the pain here. It acknowledges how heavy this can feel. You might be feeling completely stuck right now. Maybe you spent days crying, wishing things were different, or just feeling hopeless because of how you're being treated. And you know what? It is totally okay that you feel this way right now. But the crucial promise from the text is this: no matter how stuck you feel today, you are not going to feel this way forever.
And this is where we get a massive perspective shift. What if your enemies are simply calculated distractions? All those rumors, the opposition, the folks actively trying to pull you down, the source explains these aren't actually fatal threats to your destiny. No, they're just distractions designed to lure you off course. They want to get you so upset that you waste all your incredible potential on something that frankly doesn't matter at all. The second you label them as a distraction, they completely lose their power over you.
Okay, so how should we actually react? The source gives us 3 straightforward steps. Step 1, stay calm. Just keep shining and focus on your goal, not the noise. Step 2, refuse to be offended. Look, when people are mean, they're just showing you what's inside of them, not you. And step 3, which is definitely the hardest but absolutely the most effective, say nothing at all. Don't waste your words. Seriously, sometimes the most powerful, absolute best thing you can possibly say is nothing.
All right, let's dive into our first main section, God's table and footstool.
The source anchors this whole idea in a super famous passage, Psalm 23, verse 5. God will prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. The text really emphasizes the presence part. It means God isn't just going to fix things in secret. He specifically chooses to give you honor, recognition, and favor right in front of the exact people who tried to ruin you. So that person who lied about you, yeah, one day they're going to have to watch you celebrating at that table.
I absolutely love this vivid metaphor from the source. It says to imagine that God has turned the oven on, and your blessing is currently baking. The dinner is almost ready. And the best part? It's not going to be a solo dinner. You'll have onlookers. Those distractors we talked about? They'll be standing by, watching you get promoted and watching you accomplish your biggest dreams. So if you're in the waiting period right now, just remember, your vindication is in the oven.
This builds perfectly into another powerful scriptural anchor from Psalm 110. It says, "Sit down at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool." The source points out something fascinating here. Sometimes you actually need God-given enemies. Crazy, right? But without them, we tend to get way too comfortable. All that pressure they create, it's often the exact thing God uses to push you to the next level of your calling.
Let's define what that actually means. A footstool is an enemy brought under submission that you now use to rest and elevate yourself. And this brilliantly illustrates the dynamic. The text promises that God is going to take the exact situations weighing you down and bring them right under your feet. They literally go from being your biggest obstacle to the very thing that props you up. Talk about a plot twist.
Moving right along to section 2, the power of perspective. The source uses the classic story of David and Goliath to show us 2 completely different ways to view our problems. First, you have the natural perspective. Naturally, Goliath was huge, practically twice David's size, way stronger with way better equipment. And looking at that, the entire army of Israel was terrified. But then you have the faith perspective. David didn't care about Goliath's size because he knew God was bigger. If David only looked at the natural facts, he never would have stepped onto that battlefield. Which leads us to a really crucial takeaway. The very first place we lose victory is right between our ears, in our own thinking. The source urges us to stop telling ourselves the situation is too much. You have to quit saying you can't handle it. The battle is always internal before it's ever external. You've got to realize that the greatest force in the universe is breathing in your direction. You've got this.
You can see how David kept this exact perspective in Psalm 59. He boldly declares, "I will look down in triumph on all my enemies."
Notice he says all of them, not just a few. He walked by faith, not by sight. Even when the situation around him was completely chaotic and it definitely did not look like things were under his feet yet, he was out there declaring his triumph in advance.
We see this perspective shift beautifully in Isaiah 54 with the story of the barren woman. Here's a woman with zero physical signs of abundance or results. Can you imagine the gossip she had to deal with? Yet, what is she instructed to do? She's told to sing, to rejoice, and literally enlarge her tent to prepare for growth. All of this before she ever saw a single result. That is the ultimate faith perspective right there, getting ready for the blessing before it even arrives.
And that brings us to our final section, the posture of peace.
The instruction here is loud and clear. Stop trying to force things to happen on your own. The source makes the point that living your life constantly upset, always trying to defend yourself, is a totally failing strategy. Sure, it takes massive faith to just step back and say, okay, God, I'm letting you handle this. But when you let God do it His way, the vindication is bigger, sweeter, and infinitely more rewarding than anything you could have ever engineered yourself.
If you're ever tempted to worry about the opposition you're facing, the source suggests this really cool mental exercise. I want you to literally imagine leaning back in a huge, comfortable chair. Now visualize putting your feet up and resting them right on top of your enemies. It's a symbolic way of declaring that this situation, it's under your feet now. It's not a permanent problem, it's temporary, and you're just resting right over it.
And that visualization brings us to the climax of this whole explainer. Peace is a position of power. I know, it sounds totally backwards to how the world works, doesn't it? But true power isn't found in arguing or striving. True power is found when you just rest, stay still, and keep your joy. Because it's exactly in that state of peace that God steps in and fights your battles for you.
So I want to leave you with one final question to chew on today. Will you let God fight your battles? Will you make the choice to ignore the distractions, keep that faith perspective, and hold on to your posture of peace? Because if you do, the promise here is crystal clear. God will use the very things trying to pull you down to lift you up, turning your greatest opposition into your ultimate promotion. Definitely something to think about as you go through the rest of your day.